All right. So we should be live. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Just give me 1 second to get organized here, and then we'll jump into it. Hope everyone is having a good Sunday. So first order of business, I just want to thank all of the new Patreon supporters, Patreon members. Really appreciate the support. Got some great questions this month. We will be doing one more normal Sunday live, we could say, where you guys can ask me your questions, patrons can ask me your questions, and we'll answer them here live for everyone to kind of enjoy and benefit from. And then starting next month, we're going to be doing one private Q&A where we're going to talk more specifically about what I'm buying, maybe some of my blunter opinions on the market, and we're just going to see how all of that goes. So I've been talking to you guys about that quite a bit, so I won't go into it that much. But so the first weekend of next month, either the first weekend or the second weekend of next month, we'll do that first private Q&A. We're still trying to figure out what time will work best for everyone. The reality is there isn't going to be a time that everyone can come to live, so we'll have a system where you guys can ask me private questions beforehand, make sure that those are answered, and also we'll try and accommodate things so that whatever time we do pick, we maybe pick a different time next month to try and make sure that everyone can make it. I understand there are people watching this channel from all different time zones, Europe, Australia, etc. So it's just difficult to find a time that will work for everyone live. So probably very likely we'll start with just this time because this has been the time that's been working for most people and the time that the channel's been built around, but we might do a little bit of 8 p.m. time for certain people who can't do the earlier time because they work, and maybe a little bit earlier in the day for Europeans. I know later in the day you'll be asleep. It won't be ideal, or you'll have to stay up quite late, which we don't want you doing so on a Sunday night. So we will figure all of that out. Definitely will just be a process of like trying different things, seeing what we all like, and adapting. I think that's the best way to do it. So appreciate everyone's support, patience. Hopefully it'll be fun. We'll have some good value. I'm planning on using this software that will allow us to like actually talk, and people can actually come up on stage, talk about themselves. It can also be hopefully a great networking opportunity for people to meet each other, maybe make some connections, do some business together. All that sort of thing is part of what I'm interested in creating, that type of community. So as people are coming in, thank you all for being here. Hey, you say booyah, Big Wheezy, Michael Bowerman, John Pokemon, Swami, Basic Trainer, Winters, nice to see all of you guys. Dev True, Team Trubbish, Joke 3RS Favor. Lots of familiar names. Nice to have you all here. So let's jump into some Patreon questions because we got a number of them to go through, and then, like usual, we will jump into just some regular, just some regular questions that from the chat here, from the live chat here, and we can have a conversation, go back and forth, have some fun. Okay. All right, first question is, hey Jake, I just joined your Patreon today, thank you. I've been doing Pokemon every day since summer of 2019, and I plan to be here for the long term. I have a question for the live Q&A. I wonder what your thoughts are about the ridiculous market caps for modern sets. The Hidden Fates Charizard PSA 10 alone got a higher market cap than all of the first edition Gym Heroes cards in a PSA 10 combined. People are saying that the PSA returns will crash the modern set cards, but I think the prices already are too good to be true. Yeah, so it's interesting. So it's a great point. So there's something going on clearly, right, in Pokemon where a lot of modern cards are much more, I hesitate to use the word popular, but maybe that's the correct word, much more popular, much more in demand, or at the prices that they're selling, a lot more people seem to want those cards than some of these vintage items. So that is why we see, despite a huge market cap for a card like that and lots more supply and already a pretty high price for a card like that, the demand for that card in the broader market is a lot higher. Now, will that demand always be there? That's one question. So two things to think about Modern. One is, will the demand always be there for Modern? And what I would say is that Modern is a lot riskier with demand because there's always going to be new sets and new shiny cards and more different competitive, cool looking things in Modern, that you have to worry about that sort of like flavor of the month type thing. Like, is this card, Modern card, just because it's very hot right now, is it the flavor of the month? I think you're going to see that with lots of Charizards over time. Something like a Hidden Fates Charizard, probably going to be the one to make it, right, in terms of that demand side. As long as Pokemon's doing well, there's always probably going to be a lot of a lot of demand for that card. Maybe not as much as there is right now, but probably a lot. And then you're going to hope that kids will want to, collect that card down the line. All these sorts of common arguments, right? Multiple generations in the hobby, that'll be sort of their chase card. These types of arguments that a lot of people make. All possible, but all not set in stone. So that's all risk, right? So that's all speculation, and you can't bank on any of that. But you have to worry about that demand changing, right? But the real kicker as you get here is that supply side. The supply side is the most kind of scary side right now of Modern, even if I think that the demand side also doesn't make sense and makes me worried, because I think that the vintage stuff will end up having more demand in the long term. With everyone sort of flocking back to that at different periods, at different cycles. Particularly when there's hundreds and hundreds of Pokemon sets to choose from in the Modern, and it all kind of blends together, and then you have Wizards of the Coast, which I think will always be that, to use a comic book term, like that golden age, that super rare vintage stuff, as long as the hobby does well in the long term, which is, nobody can know for sure. So you have to worry about a lot more of those cards being graded, right? A lot more of those cards being graded. Then you're going to have to worry about a number of these vintage cards, particularly in PSA 10. Now, we have to be very careful because there's so much unlimited base set, for example. There's so much PSA 7, PSA 8, PSA 9, right? So why on this channel we've always talked about, like, Neo PSA 10s, E-Series PSA 10s, Gold Star PSA 10s as the cards that I feel very confident that there's just not going to be a lot more in the population, whereas I've been trying to say, been saying all along, just be very concerned, I'm be wary, and I think we're seeing a lot of that anxiety and nervousness right now on your 6s, your 7s, your 8s on many of these cards, particularly in sets like base set, including base set first edition, where there's still a lot coming in the pop. Sets like, Jungle, Fossil, Team Rocket for sure. And just to repeat it as I always try to, right? It's important to know, kind of get a sense of how many cards are from each of these sets. And as we've been talking about on this channel all along, my sense, just because I've bought so many cards, I've seen so many collections, and I've been involved so intensely for like hours every single day for the past 4 years, you get a sense of kind of what's out there, and that's just proving more and more true as I continue to dig into the analytics and we see the pop reports coming back. E-Series, nothing so far. Neo's very little in terms of high grade relative to, Fossil, Team Rocket the most. But unlimited base, huge amounts of unlimited base. So there's a lot of vintage left to be graded. So we have to be careful. I think that there's this idea about vintage that it's all investable just because it's old, and that's not true. Age is one important piece, and with age also comes generally lower condition, which is another important piece. But the most important piece of all of that is rarity, and so there can be old items that are just printed so much that there's plenty of it to go around, at least for now, and probably for the foreseeable future until we get some more bull runs in the future of Pokemon, which I think we'll have. So definitely agree with the premise of your question. I'd be very careful. It doesn't make any sense to me, and that's why I would never buy that card. And I'm but there's also a subjective element of it feels much more special to have a Gym Challenge First Edition PSA 10, as your question said, or a Gym Hero, even if those sets aren't that rare, that hard to grade. A lot of those cards, it feels a lot more special, and I also know those pop reports are probably going to double, triple maybe, not 50x, which is what we're going to likely see in Hidden Fates, 100x maybe in Evolutions, 200. I mean, it's going to get crazy with the amount of numbers we're seeing. And I'm, as I said, I've been tracking those analytics and 1,000 cards a week right now from a lot of these sets. 1,000+ cards a week are being graded. Okay. Next question. Thank you for your channel and the good work you put out. I liked your video on pessimism. Your knowledge just helps me a lot. Helping me understand the fundamentals of collectibles was helpful. I started during the Logan Paul hype and made money from easy flips and going to other collectibles. It worked even in South Africa. Hope to see you seem greedy in the bear market. I would like to know how you buy when the knife is falling. And is there a set promo I can research myself where there are cards with good fundamentals? Yeah, great question. So, and the details of this is something we could talk about in Patreon, like what I'm actually buying and why, and what I'm looking to buy and where I'm looking to buy it at, and just talk through that, share that info we can all share with each other. Generally speaking, it's going to depend on a lot of things, though. It can't be that general. But I guess, all right, putting aside all of the specifics, like your income level, how long you can hold these items, right? Because if you can hold these items for a long time and you don't need to sell, that can mitigate some of the risk of if you buy an item, even if it goes down 50% more, as long as you're very confident in the long run, it's going to go up quite a bit. It can be a smarter purchase or a more reasonable purchase than if you're buying, buying on credit or putting yourself in a really tough financial position where you're forcing yourself to likely have to sell things if things go down. If things don't recover for 5 years, you're not going to be able to hold on to everything, that sort of thing. So all that stuff's really important to think about. The general thing I would say is that you want to buy things that you don't feel like the market is going to be flooded with. Generally, when the knife is falling, it's that every card that comes out has another lower sale. So catching the knife at the lowest sale is often going to happen when you catch the knife at a card that doesn't come up for sale that much, for example. Or if you notice that certain cards were coming up a lot and now those cards are slowing and they're not coming up as much. That's the type of thing I look for because, and this is how I think that I make all my money and how I, to share with you guys. I watch so closely that when I see those cards stop being relisted on eBay, and what has concerned me this whole time is if you go on eBay right now and you went on the whole year, you just see tons of cards being listed at high prices. People just wanting to sell their cards, putting it back out there, fielding offers, that sort of thing. What I want to see is those items going into collectors' hands and disappearing from the market, and those people saying, I want this item in my collection, and it's going to take another 5x in price for it to ever pry it from my hand. Rather than, I want this in my collection, but if it goes up 5-10%, or if it's, I might sell it to pay a bill, the sort of loose hands. When I feel like an item, and I track these items, and I track cert numbers on specific items, particularly these little pop items that I look at, when I see those items not exchanging hands, not coming up on PWCC a lot, not coming up on the open market a lot, that's when I think, okay, next time this one comes on the market, I'll probably buy it. Because that's probably the last one that might come on the market. It's a rare item, and I understand that if another one comes on that market, it's probably going to go lower, and it's probably going to go 20 to 30% lower, maybe. Maybe it won't go lower. We'll see. It depends on the panic fear cycle and where we're at, and things could retrace quite a bit from here, 100%. We just don't know how all this works. Just like we didn't know how high it was going to get. We don't know how low it's going to go now. We just know that once it goes too low, and if people are overly pessimistic, it'll recover, and if people are overly irrationally exuberant, it will recover down, which is what we're seeing now. So preparing yourself mentally, buying that item if it retraces that 20 to 30%, understanding that's all part of it. It's very difficult to time things. I have to tell you guys, I have been unbelievably lucky in the Pokemon card market. I do not expect to continue to be as lucky as I've been. There has been nothing. I own not a single card that is lower priced than when I bought it. And that's mainly, it's because I'm patient, it's because I'm careful, it's because I do all those analytics, because I track things, it's because I know what price to buy it, it's because I track the certs, because I'm a crazy person, I actually do all that work. But it's also hugely because of the moment that I came in the market, because I came at the market at a perfect time when it was very low, when it had already retraced from that 2016 boom, and I bought in most of my stuff right before it started. It started to to take up, take off a little bit, or go back up slowly. So that's not the time we're in right now. So I'm expecting, if I'm buying right now, that there's a very realistic chance that I will lose money on those items in the short term, and I'm preparing for that. I'm very prepared for that. Been, buying stocks, investing since I was 14 years old. Very comfortable with down days, with red days. It's all a part of it. It's really about your value investing and your assessment of the fundamental asset that you're buying, and not so much how the market views it day to day. It's more important what you think, and you think in the long term. So I hopefully all that's valuable and helpful to think about. So looking at rare items, looking at items that you think are going to be in collectors' hands, looking at items that aren't coming up on the market a lot, looking at items that there isn't going to be a flood more of them at PSA to be sold on the market. All that is the stuff that I'd be looking for, and looking at buying and considering buying. I'd be patient, wait for what seems like a good deal. Outside of outside of certain cards that are so rare that it's probably a time to pounce. And I think buying at market, or buying even a little higher than market for certain cards still today probably still makes sense. It's just a very small amount of those cards that I would be doing that for. Okay. Fantastic question, and it's something that nobody can time the market accurately. So it's more about understanding broadly how markets work, so that you give yourself the best chance at buying at a good time, and buying a good item that will do well over the long term. What's your view? Next question. What's your view on what will happen to vintage English set cards where the PSA first edition pop is materially larger than the unlimited pop? I don't know. It's a good question. I think Neo is like the best example of this, because there's just so little Neo now. There's so little Neo first edition too, and I don't really think that there's. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure how much Neo Unlimited there is versus Neo, first edition in the world. How much more will be graded? These types of things. How many sealed boxes are left? That sort of thing. All of it's quite rare. What I would be doing and looking at with those is it's a little bit tough with unlimited. So there are collectors I know who are completionists who have lots of money, and they just want one of like every PSA 10, including all the unlimited PSA 10s, and there's a certain fun and chase to try to get those like PSA 2, PSA 3, sorry, not PSA 10 Pop 3, PSA 10 Pop 2 type cards that exist in some of those like Neo Unlimited things. And so there's there are bounties out for anyone who can find one in grade 1, and they're just so hard to find. It doesn't do it for me personally. I prefer the first edition, even if the first edition's there are a few more of those copies than the unlimited. I prefer them by quite a bit. It's a personal preference, I think. Part of it is like condition rarity is not as nearly as intriguing to me as absolute rarity. And so the card is definitely not rare, but the condition is rare. And I like condition rarity. I'm not saying I don't like condition rarity. I certainly believe that PSA 10s are going to have a premium and are good investments, and are also very enjoyable as collectibles compared to some of their 9 counterparts, particularly for cards that are very hard to grade. But it's not my favorite fundamental. My favorite one is that absolute rarity piece. And generally speaking, first edition is going to have more absolute rarity. And if it doesn't have more absolute rarity, it's going to have probably similar rarity in those in the Neos, for example. And you'd think it's going to have that premium because first edition is that people want the first printing of things, generally speaking. But the market will decide. People will decide how they feel. I think narratives are going to be tried to be pushed by people that Unlimited needs to be better, First Edition needs to be better, PSA 10s need to be great, PSA 10s are stupid because there's no whitening. All that stuff at the end of the day, just because there's like a little bit less whitening than a 9, all that stuff at the end of the day it's good to listen to those arguments and consider them, but the market will decide at the end of the day, and I just don't think that I have any sort of ability to determine exactly what the market is going to decide on all those things. So hedging your risk, right? Maybe buying a little of each. Buying what you enjoy the most, what you're going to enjoy the most in your collection, that sort of thing. I think they're all good buys, though. I've definitely changed my feelings on Unlimited, particularly from the Neos. Unlimited on the other sets, I've things like Unlimited Jungle, Unlimited Fossil, it's well behind, in my opinion, the First Edition. It's a great question. And, of course, on the Japanese side, that's where you see Unlimited sets actually being printed less than First Edition sets in a number of cases. For those who don't know, Japanese First Edition, they printed Japanese First Edition, and then if there was more demand for that set and they needed to do a reprint, they would do a full reprint or a smaller reprint of Unlimited. Thus, there'd be more First Edition, for example, from things like E-Series. There's more First Edition than Unlimited, we think. There's more First Edition than Unlimited in the original Nintendo EX era sets on the Japanese side. Hey Jake, I have a question for this week's live chat. If demand continues to stay strong, should Pokemon consider printing First Edition versions of sets again? They could either print a First Edition run in addition to how much would they normally print of a set, or they could designate a small initial portion. Sure. Let's see what else you got here. Either way, they focus more hardcore collectors. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting for them to try it and see how it goes. There's always been concern, and this is not my area of expertise at all, because I'm not, I don't buy from distributors, I don't open and break modern product for people, I don't sell modern product to people, but my understanding and concerns I've heard is how is that going to be allocated, and the fact that like the First Edition stuff is going to be potentially so much more valuable. That is it going to be fairly allocated? Are people going to try and gouge people for prices? Is it going to cause more issues? That doesn't really worry me and bother me. Just instinctually, I would just let the open market decide the value for those things, and it could help with a lot of the frustration with people who just want to open the cards to have cool looking cards at a cheaper value, which would be phenomenal. Because there are plenty of people in this hobby who they'd much rather not, like they don't care that much about the value. They just want to have like cool looking cards in their binder. I'm that way also for a lot of my cards, and having sets and things that I can open, for example, Korean Yu-Gi-Oh, that just like has no value, but is like super nostalgic, super fun, cool to look at, maybe has a little bit of value, right? Some of those cards are actually quite valuable, interestingly. That's a whole nother thing, but, or seemingly, in terms of what they're selling on the secondary market. But generally speaking, just things that are very cheap, where you can open a lot for a cheap amount and have like really cool looking cards for few dollars a card, is great for the hobby and great for so many of us who we love collecting and enjoying it. It's not just about having expensive things. All right. And last question for today. Great Patreon questions, as always. Again, thank you all so much for the fantastic questions. After watching a number of your videos, one question or thought that I had before coming back into the Pokemon hobby was setting a percentage of how much of my total dollar I'm comfortable losing while still having fun. Yeah. So, it's definitely something I've talked about. It's going to vary from person to person. It's going to vary depending on your age. Again, I'm not a financial advisor here, but I generally know how these things operate and how they work and how advice is given, by financial advisors. Generally speaking, right, it's going to depend on your age, going to depend on your income, your risk tolerance, all those sorts of things, how long you can hold the items, how much you're diversifying into different types of collectible assets or antiques and other sorts of alternative assets, we could say. It's how much money you have. a very big part of it is going to be your, in my view, is going to be how much cash you're getting in and your expenses month to month. If your expenses are extremely low, you can, and you want to take a risk and you want to enjoy this hobby, I'm not sure it's the most financially prudent thing you could do, but life, there's a lot more to life than money. And so enjoying your money when you're young, although it can cost you money in the long run, because all the money you make when you're very young, if you put it in a S&P 500, for example, it's going to exponentially grow 8% every year. The compound interest will make you shockingly a lot of money if you're very good at saving and investing. There is more to life than that, and however people choose to live their lives, I'm in support as long as they can support themselves and they're not hurting anyone or I think that the danger is that when people don't, it's very hard to be responsible, and I'm addicted, and I know my own addictions and I'm aware of my own addictions in this hobby, and I am careful with my money in part because I know how much I love to spend, and I know how much I love the dopamine release of buying items, of opening packs, and so just being like honest with yourself, being kind, empathetic, those types of things, trying to make that plan that will work for you, and then track your results, track how much you're spending. It can be so easy to spend lots and lots of money on credit cards, just not think about them, and then all of a sudden a huge bill hits you, and you can't pay it, and you have to sell a card, or you have to start paying interest, and then that interest is going to roll over potentially month to month, costing you more and more interest, or worst case scenario, you forget and you don't pay anything, and then you get hit with a large APR increase, and now you're paying. You were paying 14% on your credit card, and now you're paying 30% or whatever, something insane. Interest, yearly interest. So all that stuff's important. Understanding basic finance, basic money budgeting skills. It's all part of enjoying a hobby, which is very expensive, but very fun. And this hobby is a lot more, is about a lot more than just money. So it isn't just all about like making the best premium financial decisions, but you don't want to buy so much, and you don't want to do something that makes you anxious, and so you can't enjoy the hobby. And I think that's where the get rich quick, or the fear of missing out, the FOMO, and that was just plagued almost everyone this year, probably caused people to buy things where they felt buyer's remorse, and that's not a good feeling. And when you do that, and you do that a lot, and you live in that anxiety about money and not having enough money, or being on debt, it's not a pleasant place to live. What I will say is it's a very normal mistake. And the good thing about this hobby is so many of us are so young that these are things that it's very easily fixable, particularly if you have a job and you have an income. And these are great life lessons, and it's stuff that everyone struggles with. And so I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about it, or get too down on yourself. But yeah, it's important. In terms of like an exact percentage, to go to the Patreon question of like what I would spend a month, I just can't give one. It's going to depend on that individual for all the things we talked about. There have been times where I was spending almost every dollar I made in a month on Pokemon because I felt like there was great opportunity there, and I was willing to take the risk, and I have lots of other assets, that sort of thing. And then there are times, where I was spending nothing. I basically spent nothing on Pokemon in the last like 5 months, outside of like 1 or 2 cards. I was spending on other collectibles though, but and then there were times when I spend more of like a maybe 10% of my paycheck on collectibles, investing 10% in these types of things, 5%, when the market was maybe more steady, and I felt like decent time to get in, but it wasn't a time when I felt like there were so many deals to be had that it was worth putting all my money into it, because there's probably a limited time when I would be able to capitalize on the bearishness in the market, or the over pessimism. So we may run into a time like that again where I'm spending most of my income. Now I do not sell. So I did sell a little bit of stock at one point. It was about it was about a month before COVID started. And I plowed all that money into Pokemon, because I felt that there was this, run going to happen and this bullishness going to happen, and I just felt like there was going to be a limited amount of time left where I could get all of this stuff. And I noticed that when COVID started in particular, that people were still buying despite all of like the negative ideas and the negative stereotypes, and and the stimulus checks, and we've been through it all, what happened. But that would be something that I hope probably will never do again, unless I just feel like there's just an unbelievable opportunity where I do sell some more stock. Now, I sold Pokemon cards and then I put it all back in the stock market at the height of Logan Paul, basically, and kind of, move the money around. And I'm not a big day trader and seller like that, but there are times when I will make a move like that over the course of a few months, that type of thing. But okay. My main what I would suggest for most people, particularly if you're not following the market as intensely as I do, and what I would suggest for most people is just budget yourself, put in a little bit at a time if this is something you really enjoy, save up for certain cards you're looking for, and just be patient, or save up some money, take a break, see where the market's at in a year, 6 months to a year, see if you still want the cards, and then purchase then. I think all of that is solid advice on what to do. Okay, so let's jump into the chat. Great Patreon questions as always. If you guys can take a second, if anyone can like the video, help with the algorithm, I would appreciate it. If you guys appreciate the content, that would be a way to support me and what I'm doing. Thank you very much. Okay. Basic Trainer says, hey Jake, I really don't think Pokemon will go through a junk slab era, as Pokemon cards are 10% of the backlog, and I believe 75% of those are modern, which is probably good for price entry. Thoughts? So we are seeing about, on a lot of the modern sets, we're seeing about 1,000 cards or more a week coming back from specific sets, when there were only about 2,000 cards graded from that entire set, and that's where it established those price points. So unless there's a lot more demand looking to buy those cards at that price, and it can all those cards can be absorbed at sort of that same price over and over and over again, which is possible. You're going to see it retrace just by simple law of supply and demand. That is how supply and demand works. It's not complicated. It's very simple. I think people overthink these things sometimes. Or they don't, people underestimate, like, people don't want to believe bad things sometimes. So, and so you have to be aware that, like, sometimes we don't want to just be like, yeah, it's supply and demand, and there's going to be, this population report's gonna go from 100 cards to 10,000 cards. That's going to be a lot more supply. What's that going to do to the price? And again, one of two things: either it's going to be bought up and absorbed at that floor price, which to your point could be possible for certain cards. I was of the mind that the fact that PSA even raised the prices on cards is, raised the prices on the cases on grading, probably raised the floor on a lot of these cards. We're going to have to see all of that plays out. I don't really know. It's possible a lot of these cards just may sell under that floor and people will just be losing money on all of the cards they're grading. They won't even be getting out of the card or breaking roughly even. I don't know. 10% of the backlog is a huge amount. So that's going to be many, many cards. And as you said, it is probably going to be mostly modern, although it is also going to be a lot of like unlimited base set. There's going to be a lot of vintage, commons and commons, a lot of shadowless, commons and commons, things like that, first edition commons and commons and lower grades. So just be careful, be aware. I'm tracking the pop reports closely. There's a lot every week, and it's getting more and more and more, and we haven't seen anything yet because most of the submissions, we're still in like August submissions, or maybe we're into September submissions now. The craze didn't even start yet. The hype didn't even start when people started, when a lot of the sports guys got in the game and started grading hundreds and hundreds of the same cards, sending it all in to try and flip. Now, a lot of those were probably express graded, and they've already been absorbed in the market, so we're going to have to see how all of that plays out. In terms of like what do we mean by a junk slab era? It's a cute term, right? It's a credit to Squeaks for the cute term, and it's a great play on the junk wax era that happened in sports. So we'll see. We'll have to see what that really looks like. I think for certain cards, probably certain like promos that were like in tons and tons of tins, wink wink. Those types of cards, it might just be flooded. Cards that you had to pull, like even Hidden Fates, like even though there's so much Hidden Fates, there's a lot of those different shiny full out cards. It's not that easy, right? It's not very easy to pull a specific one. So there won't be nearly as many of those as there will be of some other things. And those are going to be probably extremely popular. I think in the long run, there might be a time where you see me buying lots of those if they really dip down too low. Wink, wink. But the prices have been crazy all year. They continue to be way too high for most things relative to vintage. Vintage is where, in trophy cards is still where all the value is by far. It's not even close right now. Will there come a time when that shifts and changes? There could, and then I'd be interested because I think in the long term, certain modern sets today will be fairly historic and popular and very well regarded and all that sort of thing. So in the long run. And I love modern Pokemon and really enjoy it. So and I think a lot of people do. Oh, another thing I want to mention is we're gonna make some like emoji giphy things for the chat because I think that's what all these channels do. So we're gonna have that and do some sort of like cheap membership where you guys can get those if you just want to support the channel and don't want to be a part of the Patreon, that sort of thing. We're gonna add that too, probably starting next month. Definitely no pressure to sign up for any of that. Ernesto Alvarez says, question, hey Jake, how do you feel about Rayquaza? Top 3 artworks and where do you place it in the tier list of legendaries? Yeah, Rayquaza's awesome. Gosh. Yeah, I put it like just under Lugia for me. I think Lugia and Rayquaza are my top 2 favorites. I do really like some of the I like Celebi as a mythical a lot. I've always felt that Celebi was underrated. I like Jirachi too, but Celebi to me was actually more underrated than some of the other Pokemon, just for me personally. It's very subjective. Yeah, I think Rayquaza's super popular, obviously. Super desired. There are either some overvalued Rayquaza cards, wink wink Gold Star, or some undervalued Rayquaza cards because, yeah, in the hobby, one or the other in terms of, it doesn't make sense why some are very expensive and some are much less. It is what it is. Relative to other things, where like that Rayquaza's worth so much more than the Charizard. It's a lower pop card, but not significantly lower pop. It's not an impossible card to get or grade. Those are both very difficult cards to grade and find in PSA 10. So it's interesting, but and my top 3 artworks, so that would certainly be one. That's an amazing artwork, the Gold Star one, particularly the Japanese one. I like a lot better with the silver border. Always liked that card with the silver border. Let's see. I believe it's EX Dragon. I like the one from that set. I need to go back through all my EXs. I haven't looked at that era in a while. Not a lot of cards at all being graded from those eras, guys. So few. It's amazing. So this idea that we just never saw that product, people didn't open it, people weren't hoarding it. People there were some big guys who were hoarding some Wizards of the Coast stuff, particularly through Neos, who seem to have never touched or had almost no of that Nintendo EX era. So that era is super scarce, it seems. So I'm glad I bought a lot of that when I could. I probably should have bought more. I think I underestimated the potential value of a lot of those like reverses and other sorts of things if it remains that like they're so hard to find, particularly of like first appearance cards of like Gen 3 Pokemon, that sort of thing. And the other artworks, I think the Level X artworks are cool, but I probably wouldn't put them at the top. I think the Shining Rayquaza from Shining Legends is cool. I think I like the Rayquaza from like the SL set. I like that. The SL subset with all the shinies. I like that subset a lot. I've always felt that subset was cool and underrated. So yeah, those are some of the ones I like. VVV says, "Hey Jake, I'm thinking of signing up to be a patron. That would be phenomenal. Just as a note, and what I've said to people is like, if you sign up for it this month, unless you're doing the consulting level, which I have been starting to do consulting for certain people, and you will get that right away if you do it. We'll get you in this month. Every time you pay that consulting fee, the $50, you'll get another, individual session, consult with me. Outside of that tier, the other tier doesn't go into effect until next month, in the sense that we're still doing this month. We're still doing the normal Patreon where you're just asking me a private personal question that I can either answer privately to you, one question, or I can answer it on the live. We'll do that one more time next week. So if you're signing up for the Patreon, next month will be the starting month where you'll get that private Q&A live thing. Okay. So you can wait till next month if you'd prefer for that. Okay. So questions about Rafi. So Rafi is still a part of the channel. Like, he watches most of the videos. The truth is, like, Rafi and I just have very, very busy schedules. We both work full-time jobs, full-time plus jobs. So we work over 40 hours a week at our normal jobs. And then Rafi has, lots of kids now, new baby, and our schedules just don't match up a lot. So we are going to try to create videos together. We love talking and love making videos together, and will always be a part of the channel. So yeah, but that's where Rafi is. It's hard for us to find overlapping moments where we can both do it. Let's see here. VVV says, is Patreon monthly, or are you committed to like 6 months? So Patreon is monthly, so you get charged by the month. So when you sign up for Patreon, you get charged in that month, and then when the next month rolls around, you'll get charged for that next month, and you'll get all the rewards from those types of things. Okay. Stock Jockey says, Jake, questions. What is your cutoff year for vintage Pokemon sets versus modern Pokemon sets? I'm trying to focus on PSA 10 cards, which I don't think will have large population increases. Thanks. There's no cutoff, so age is not as important as rarity, because things will get old, and they will have age eventually, as long as the hobby stays interesting and engaging. So firsts are important, so like first appearances, first types of release in a long line of released, first type of promo in a long line of promos, like that is going to have some sort of like historic probably value above other things. But age in itself is not a crucial piece. It just usually correlates with the older stuff tends to be rare, tends to be more difficult to get in mint, etc. But that's not always the case. As we know, there are certain modern promo cards, there are modern trophy cards that are extraordinarily rare and are extraordinarily valuable, and they will eventually become vintagey, or I don't know if we'll consider them vintage, or vintage will be, in the vernacular, in the lingo we all decide to adopt in 20 to 30 years. I don't know, but it will have quite a bit of age to it. So no line. So for me, it's more about those other things. And you say, Stock Jockey, that you're trying to focus on cards that you don't think will have large population increases. And I think that that's financially definitely the way to go, as long as you're buying cards that also are going to have really good demand because you do have to think about what creates demand. And there could be a reason, particularly if you're buying modern cards, that there aren't a lot of those graded. Not just because there aren't a lot of those cards out there, but because there isn't demand for a lot of those cards. They were never selling, so people didn't grade them and aren't grading them, etc. All right. Alex Coronado says, hey, Jake, with the graded card craze going on, why don't people look at coins and gold to invest in as well in this market? So I believe that coins have had a good year, like all alternative assets and collectibles. Yeah, I'm not a fan of gold. It's just not my thing. So I prefer... yeah. I won't go into that. That's a whole thing. That could be a whole long conversation about my feelings on things like gold as a store of value, or things like crypto, which I view as in some ways digital gold. At least it is now, until unless it becomes an actual currency that we use effectively, and we actually buy things consistently with it, not just NFTs online. Which we might one day. You never know. Your average player says, I think people are more confident buying newer cards because they can calculate that it will be more expensive to pull. Okay, but vintage can't be pulled, so no value can be calculated. I think that there's a great point in that, which is that there are certain people who just want the card, and it's cheaper to just buy it than it is to pull it themselves and then grade it. That's very true for vintage as well, though, and why people buy those PSA vintage cards. I think the main reason why modern is cheaper is because it's filled with more casual people who are not as engaged and don't really know what's going on in the market. They don't really know the supply side, so they're just not concerned. They're not watching channels like this. This is far too much and in depth, and it's also just it's much less expensive. That's probably the primary reason. Is it's readily available, it's less expensive, and it's shiny, and it's cool, and it's new, and it's fun, and people like to collect with their friends, and like to complete binder sets, and it's just a lot more doable. So there's a lot of enjoyment to be had in all of that. I think the key is are you investing, or are you having fun with something that is probably not going to be worth a lot in the future? And that's where I think people miss it. But for most things on the modern side. But most things on the vintage side are going to be worthless too. Fairly worthless. Okay? So there's only 5%, less than 5% of things that, in the hobby, cards in the hobby, and cards in a certain grade in the hobby that I think are likely going to see increases into the future as long as the hobby does well. So that's not what people have been thinking and not what people have been saying, and I don't agree with that because that isn't what has happened in other hobbies, and so. Okay. Car19 says, Pokenomics, do you see the video with Pokegal and the PSA employee? He made it seem like only 10% of the backlog is Pokemon, with most of it being sports. Yeah, so, I don't know what percentage, right, but that certainly makes perfect sense. I would never have expected, that seems pretty high, because I just know how many sports cards are graded and how much, sports cards is so much bigger of a market, guys. There's so many more different packs and different types of sports cards and ranging from all different sports. Think about how much more that is than just Pokemon. The fact that Pokemon is 10% is amazing, right? Because in sports, we're talking about 20 different sports, or 10 different sports, or however many it is that are actually being graded, and 3 or 4 very large ones in markets that are 50, 60 years old. So the fact that it's 10% Pokemon is huge. That's how I actually think about that number. That just shows you how hot Pokemon has gotten, that it would be that much. Right? And sports is probably 80%, and maybe 10% more is the rest. The rest of the other, TCG card type stuff that's being graded. So, basketball might be 20 to 30%, only 3 times, and basketball is humongous right now. Jonathan Prisby says, I love the artwork of the Stained Glass Birds trio. It's the only modern card I own. Yeah, fantastic artwork. I agree. I love that card too. People having great conversations here. Thank you for keeping it all civil. Yeah, I saw a couple rude comments in my last video, so I'm just going to send out a message there that, people don't be rude to each other. Don't call each other idiots and yell at each other. Okay, please. Like, we all are entitled to our opinions, and if you think someone is being very foolish, which of course people are being foolish all the time, be kind, patient. There's a lot of defensiveness and toxic energy and anger going on right now, and we have to do our best to. This is a hobby that we all love, Shreddy in the house. Hey, Shreddy, we need to get you on the channel at some point, Shreddy. If you guys don't know, Shreddy's a great guy. You should definitely check out his channel. Give him a little shout out. But yeah, we're overdue for, I think, a conversation on my channel or your channel again. So hope you're doing well. Rainy Day Collectibles with the Celtics comments. Rainy Day, you're going to get banned. You're going to get banned from this channel. Let's not go into the Celtics game. Although, I will say one thing. They played a great first half. They were pretty close in that game, despite the fact that they could not get any offense at all. That being said, the Nets shot terribly also. But I don't think the Net, I think that we can hang with this team. I think it's just a matter of we're not going to... It's very, very unlikely for us to be able to win 4 games. Winning 1 or 2 games, we have some chance at it. It's just very unlikely to win 4 games. They're just so stacked. Celtics Nets, for those who don't know. NBA. All right. Moving on from that awful news. The old car shop says, are we in full panic mode now that the corrections have begun? No, we are not. Things could get much more panicky than they're getting now. Right? Just like, I think if you remember, I made that irrational exuberant video, and things were quite irrationally exuberant, but then it went the real intense mania, so no, you might see people freaking out a lot more. When you start hearing average people freak, so generally what will happen is the very engaged people, like on a channel like this, who are very, very engaged in the hobby, will be up on everything and will be the first ones to see everything, and thus will be probably, if they're going to panic or have irrational exuberance, be the first ones to experience that panic or the irrational exuberance. But the broader market doesn't know anything happens, doesn't check the prices regularly, isn't up on all of that. Once it hits the broader market, that's when you get panic. When the average person starts panicking and worrying, who doesn't check everything. That's also where you get that huge bubble mania. Like when your mom tells you, hey, I heard Pokemon cards were a great investment, and she had no interest in Pokemon cards, right? If she comes to you saying, I heard Pokemon cards are really down, and everyone should sell, and it's a terrible investment, and it was a complete fad and a joke, and no one ever should have bought it, and I can't believe people fell for it. It's like that, right? That type of stuff. That's where these things can go. It may never get there. Things may settle, may stabilize. No idea. I'll just report the psychology of the market, which will help us stay ahead of the game, which is the best way to think about these types of things. Don't check the prices, check the pulse of the market, the psychology, and get a sense of people being rational or being overly exuberant, overly pessimistic. That's how you should make your decisions, in my view. Cool Trainer Community said, last purchase I'm going to do in Pokemon, not a big believer in the market. Are you saying you bought some stuff? Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that there's going to be good buying opportunities in my view, but you have to understand that it's a risk. These are not necessary assets. These are assets that require people to want them and have a connection with them and really enjoy them in order to buy. Okay. And how many people are like that? I think a lot, and I think the supply is very low on certain things. So, and I think the negative narrative is going to make people more bored, more anxious, more negative than they actually feel and that they actually are if they were looking at it more objectively, we could say, or if the broader market was looking at it more objectively. So that's my take from being in it, being super engaged. In terms of your last purchase, making your last purchase right now, I think it's certainly reasonable to take a break. I think you have to be careful though, because taking breaks during those down periods, even though it can be painful to watch the down periods and look, that's also where you can find deals and where there can be buying opportunities, and where only people who are sort of can stomach, buying something and then it dipping down lower can get some of those good deals. But another way to do it is to try to then buy on when it starts to settle, stabilize, and then buy somewhere in there when things feel a little bit different. But another option is just to kind of steadily buy over time. Try to relax, put 1,000 into that card, 1,000 into that card, 1,000 into that card over the next few months. If they have in value, if they go down quite a bit, you still love the card. It's okay. In the long run, it'll probably come back. All those things are good options. Car 1988 said, I'm still of the opinion there's a lot more raw ungraded Neo Unlimited. I think there's quite a bit raw ungraded Unlimited. I certainly have a lot of raw ungraded fairly mint or mint Neo Unlimited. It's just so hard to get the 10s. So that's where it really comes into play, is those 10s. VVV says, I think we will continue to see a fall for the next few months, or at least stabilize. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Novus Veta says, curious why you stay away from sports cards. Do you see more opportunity in Pokemon? Yes. So when I got into Pokemon, I saw a huge opportunity in Pokemon because, just to put it bluntly, I didn't think that anyone was looking at the market outside of maybe a couple guys like myself as such an amazing potential investment opportunity, and that it hadn't moved the market. I just felt so low considering the rarity and the connection I thought these items would have to people in people's lives, and the fact that Pokemon is the biggest IP, pop culture IP in the world by quite a large margin. It just didn't make any sense, the prices on these types of things, because cards were so important to people's lives. Whereas the sports card market is just so much more established. There are so many big players, smart players, players who have been doing it for many years. They'd all have an advantage over me. In the Pokemon market, I felt like I had a clear advantage over almost everyone, in terms of just like the amount of effort and work and time and all that stuff I was putting into it, and tracking certain numbers and doing things that like nobody does, or almost no one. So I just felt like that's where my edge would be. And Pokemon was the pure like joy from playing those Game Boy games and from collecting those cards. I'm such a collector. And I love opening packs. I love building sets. I love all that stuff. And I loved it as a kid, like was obsessed with it. It was all I thought about for probably like 2 years. And so I also was fairly obsessive with sports cards as a kid, but I didn't have the same connection. It was like sports cards were really fun and I really enjoyed opening packs, but there was something about Pokemon. I think it was like introducing me to all those characters and the video game and that time in my life. There's something that grabbed me a lot more as a kid, at least during those 2 years when I collected Pokemon and played Pokemon games compared to sports. So I both had a financial investment reason why, and I also had a personal connection and joy and enjoyment. And to be honest, if I was a big sports collector, I would love that too. I love collecting and I love sports. I love Pokemon. I love collecting. There's so many things I love to collect. It's part of why I collect so many things. Um, but it's a great question, but a lot of it is just the lack of knowledge, the feeling like I would be the sheep, you know, in a lot of cases. But I've been learning, and something I'm interested in, particularly, I think the sports market obviously got way overinflated this year too. Lots of cards, insane things. I am interested in it, potentially. I think the other thing to mention, which I didn't mention before, is the amount of money it takes to be a big player in sports cards compared to Pokemon. Pokemon, on the salary that I had, without liquidating too much of my stock portfolio and other sorts of things, I was able to amass one of the larger collections in the world because Pokemon was so much more affordable when I was doing it than sports cards. To get the big sports cards, it was already millions of dollars. So hope that makes sense. So that's a big reason why Pokemon also made more sense. Shreddy says, looking forward to seeing some old school Yu-Gi-Oh showcasing soon, Jake. Yeah, so my plan is to get into it over the next 5 to 10 years. Gonna take my time, learn the market, exactly what I do with Pokemon. Not gonna do a lot of talking, right? A lot of listening to the people who have the knowledge, trying to absorb as much information as possible. Hopefully repeat the success I've had with Pokemon in Yu-Gi-Oh, because I really enjoy and love Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm having such a blast with the Yu-Gi-Oh Korean right now. So fun. I also love DBZ, so love that stuff too. Those are probably my 3 favorites at the moment. Although I do like Middle-earth and some other things too. Those things are not front and center for me and don't hit me quite the same way. The only issue with Yu-Gi-Oh is just the reprints, guys. It just paying that much money for a first edition one when I can get like the same card in maybe an even cooler hollow pattern for like $1, and that other card costs me like 80,000. It's a little hard to justify. So I have to do more thinking about that. I probably would never go as hard or as deep into it because of that, potentially, but I might change my mind somewhere down the line. Because I love the chase, and I want to chase some of those super rare, first edition, extremely hard cards to grade, all that sort of stuff. It's fun, love it. And as I've said so many times, life is about a lot more than just money and making money, and even the process of making money should be fun and enjoyable, ideally to some degree, if you can make it that way. So I think that enjoyment is so important to me, and doing things I'm passionate about and things I care about is also a big factor in my decision making, not just what's going to net me the biggest return in life, financial return. Crackerjack Joe says, Jake, I've got a question. Do you think the legendary Pokemon from the Diamond and Pearl era will see a rise in popularity with the games coming out? I don't know. Not sure. Sorry. I really don't know. I think that stuff's overrated. But I could be wrong about that. I think that with it, like the scenario I could imagine is like there are people who like play those games, love those games. They happen to hear that those are coming out. They rediscover that, and then somehow they also want the cards from their childhood and come back in the hobby and start doing the cards. Like there's going to be some people like that for sure, but it's not going to be like a massive number of like people who like forgot completely about Pokemon and then are rediscovering it through that, I think. But maybe some. Can't hurt. It can't hurt. The old card shop says, how do you see things going before we bottom out? I don't know. Obviously. I know my long-term plans. So I could see a wide variety of things. I could see things stabilizing. I could see things going back up, and I could see things going back down. So how about that for a non-answer? But it's really truthful. Whereas at the height of Logan Paul, I felt like it was so absurd it was only going to go down from there, even though people were saying it was going to triple again that year. I just, I had those videos with a number of people where we were talking about prices of certain cards, and they were saying price evaluations like they thought that this card would be this amount in a year or 2 years, and I was like, it's so much more likely to retrace all the way back down than it is to do that again. And to me, it's just a lack of like understanding about how the price gets built and what it takes for a price to move up that much, and usually all the psychology built into that then falls apart and prices come back down. Now I think we're at a point where a lot of that has already happened, and the negativity is kind of filtering in and being met with other sorts of things. So I'm not sure where that's all going to settle. It's part of why I did buy a card or two that I've been looking for, and if it goes down more, I'll be comfortable with it. And why I didn't buy it all in the last 6 months, basically. Nexia Mania says, what about collector's burnout? Yeah, so that's another thing I try to talk about a lot on this channel. You also get like WotC burnout, like base set burnout, like seeing the same arts over and over again. You want the gold stars, then you want the Japanese, you want the Masaki promos, the play promos, the vending series, the versus series, the Korokoro, the list goes on, the Topson, the Cardass. You want all these other things. You want modern, you want Diamond and Pearl era, you want Black and White era, you want original Nintendo EX era, right? There's so much to collect that people get bored when certain things go up way too much. Then sometimes people get bored of that, they want something else. It's sort of natural movement like that in a hobby. I think general price fatigue and collection fatigue can also happen, and I'm sure we're seeing some of that where just a large amount of people also just spend so much money they just don't have any more money. They can't keep holding these prices up. Alex Wong says, do you consider EX series to be vintage? So I'm not sure what you mean by that. So like the original Nintendo EX era, I personally would consider vintage or somewhat vintage. I don't know. It's all relative. I think this early in the hobby, nothing's that old, including stuff from like 25 years ago. So, in 25 more years, we'll maybe have more lingo or vernacular that we all agree upon. John Quinlan says, I've been building Illustrator binders. I feel like it's revealing a lot of cards from specific illustrators that are running out of available supply. And so I've been picking up duplicates of those. Yeah. Lots of interesting ways to collect and speculate. Crackerjack Joe says, have you invested in crypto at all, Jake? Normally I don't talk about specific investments I've made. So I'm going to pass on that one. That's the type of stuff that I still just keep things a bit to my chest. Fine. I'll answer it. So, no, I have no crypto. I don't like that market, not because of the asset necessarily, but I don't like the psychology of the market. I don't like I think the majority of people investing in that market aren't people that I think are value investors, that I think understand value, understand how markets are built. I think there's a lot of get rich quick, a lot of schemes, a lot of manipulation. There's just so much negativity in that. I'm just be completely blunt. That even if I think that, and I'm not so tech knowledgeable that I feel like I really understand fundamentally how this thing works, and I feel super like it's gonna change the world and that sort of intensity. I think that I've seen so many people just get so taken advantage of in the crypto community by people either flat out scamming them for their money and like getting them involved in pump and dump schemes and then pumping on their heads. That even like investing in something like Bitcoin or something where maybe that isn't happening, or it's more of a real stable, somewhat stable. I mean, obviously it's not stable at all. It's been going up and down like crazy, just like Tesla. Like I would never invest in that either for the same reason. It's just the people who are involved in it. I like people who and investing in people who think and like me. And I like investing in things that I feel like I understand and things that I feel like I can predict somewhat over time. And I'd rather work very hard at making money and investing in more reasonable, safe ways, and then taking a few risks and shots here and there, but having the majority be in stuff that is going to get me solid compound interest. I've just seen people be, that's how I've seen like significant generational wealth made, like $100 million. Like we're talking about, you can become extremely wealthy by doing that in a smart way. You don't need to be involved in this nonsense, just to be completely honest with you. That being said, the actual asset of crypto as a digital currency, the idea of digital currency makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. So do I think that eventually we won't have like physical dollars anymore potentially, and or that it will be we will be transacting and using some of these types of digital currencies as currency? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that. I'm definitely not like, that could never happen, that's ridiculous, and so, but it's not something I understand, and I don't invest because someone tells me something's great or because something's went up a lot. That's crazy, and I've had 2-hour long discussions, debates with people on crypto, around, let's go back to Pokemon, but around a lot of the concerns, and obviously some of them are probably overinflated, and there are agendas on both sides. When we talk about the environmental impacts, there are probably agendas on both sides, causing narratives that may or may not be true, overreacting here, underreacting there. It's so hard to know who to trust, to be completely honest, on all that stuff. And then when we talk about, governments controlling it, shutting it down, governments creating their own cryptocurrency, like all that stuff, if you understand all of that and you feel like you really get how all of that works and you see the path to make a lot of money with that, all the power to you, and you should make a lot of money by picking the right coin and by picking the thing that's going to make it. And I have zero against you, particularly if you're not forcing people and shaming people who don't get crypto or who aren't investing in crypto. There's just a lot in that community. There's a lot of shaming people because I think a lot of people don't believe in it. And when you have a community where there's a lot of toxicity and a lot of defensiveness, generally the underlying psychological reality is that people don't actually believe in it. And people realize that the only way it goes up is to convince more people to come in. And they don't think the product itself is going to sell itself. They think they have to sell it because it's nothing, right? And that's the concern and the worry with any sort of market. So when I see those types of sales taxes, when I see those types of pressures put on people, that worries me. So... But am I going to be I wouldn't say wrong, because I'm not saying that crypto isn't going to go up a lot or isn't going to be amazing. Would I be shocked if people continue to make a fortune, or it goes hugely and it takes over and becomes a huge thing? I wouldn't be shocked, truthfully. So all the power to you if you're investing in crypto. I just hope you know what you're doing. And you're listening to people who are being honest with you and actually have your best interests at heart and aren't just full of their own nonsense and they don't know anything, and they just predicted something would go up, and then it went up, and now they think they're a genius. I mean, we've seen those people in the Pokemon market, too. They have no understanding at all of markets and no experience in investing, and yet they're coming out here, making investment videos. So that's going to happen everywhere. Okay, end of rant. But it's very important not to pretend that you know things that you don't know. And crypto is not something that I know. It's not something that I and thus I wouldn't invest in, but it's not something I would tell someone not to invest in. I do think I have a pretty good understanding of a lot of the people in the community, we can say, and the type of tactics that I've seen on places like Clubhouse and other places to try and get people to buy and pressure people and shame people for selling. When you're shaming someone because they're not holding, this whole paper hands thing, it's kind of funny and it's kind of a meme and people are kind of joking, but in some cases they're very serious because they realize that it's basically a pyramid scheme in some situations, and all we have to do is all hold and we'll make money, this ridiculous thing that has no value to any of us. And that's crazy, right? That's just that's a crazy gambling. Okay. Brevity Gaming says, hey Jake, would you give your thoughts on EX series such as Hidden Legends, Delta Species, Crystal Guardians, very low pop sets? Data's looking very good in terms of the supply side. Not a lot coming back, not a lot being graded compared to other things, including some WotC sets, including a number of the WotC sets. So data's looking really good. It's going to be the demand side. How much demand is that going to have in the long run? That's the stuff that's just so hard to predict. And how much demand is that going to have compared to those original WotC sets? And I would imagine significantly less, but maybe not. Who knows? And it's part of why I would pick those first appearance Pokemons from 3rd gen from those sets, because you can't get those sets in WotC. You can't get those Pokemon in Wizards of the Coast. So I think they're going to be Pokédex collectors. I think they're going to be people who want one of every first appearance card in Pokemon. Like, I think these things, if this hobby lasts, like, there's going to be collectors who are doing all of those sorts of things. Because it's fun. And it's challenging. And that's what collecting is all about. Okay. Shiny Poke Hunter says, hey Jake, first time being able to make a live since living in Australia. Awesome that you're here. I apologize to our Australian friends about the time for them. The old card says, I'm pretty hesitant on graded cards. Sealed feels safer for Modern, yeah. So sealed is very logically a lot safer for Modern, but I think that it's a lot less safe than people realize, and thus I would be concerned. You know how I invest, right, guys? When I think people are being far too bullish and irrationally exuberant, that is a red flag because the prices are way too high probably for that item. And so there's this trope, there's this narrative that if you buy sealed product, it only ever goes up over time. And even if it only ever goes up a little bit, you're going to make money. There is no investment like that on planet Earth, okay? Now, that could have worked for the past 10 years, but it may have worked for very specific reasons because only one person was doing it, or 2 people, or 10 people. The thing about Rudy from Alpha Investments, just to say Rudy, it's been successful for Rudy because people weren't doing that in mass. People weren't holding all those magic boxes in mass. And also, with magic boxes, people love those things because they get to open them and draft with their friends and play the game. It's an entirely different thing in Pokemon. So be very careful with that notion that, like, anything you hold sealed goes up over time. Even buying at retail, I would be nervous buying pallets, right? Pallets and pallets of, if you're buying that much. Now, if you're buying a case, you'll probably make a little bit of money, at least in the short to medium term, maybe even in the long term. Jimmy Jam Mayer says, Jake actually speaking positive about Modern. The thing is, I love Modern. My anger and my frustration is 2 things. One, Modern should be fun and affordable for people, and it's annoying that it's not, and that's completely just personal and frustrating. And it's in large part because people have created a ridiculous thing where lots of people are going to lose money, and people aren't having fun. It's a lose-lose. The way a lot of people are treating Modern, it's a lose-lose for everyone across the hobby. 2, it's just much worse investment. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, particularly lower socioeconomic people who can only afford that, are putting lots of money in that as an investment, and that makes me angry. I'm angry at people telling people to invest in things that is going to lose them lots of money and hurt their life. It makes me angry. Hopefully I'm wrong. I'm passionate about it because I care. That doesn't mean that I'm right. Okay? But I think I will be, but, we'll see. We will see. The old Carter says, I'm a massive bull on Hidden Fates. It's the one set I'm very confident on. Yeah, it's the set that I would be most confident on, too, in the Modern world of all the sets. And there are a lot of I know that there are a lot of big stores who are holding a lot of it. And why are they holding a lot of it? Well, they're probably holding a lot of it because they think it's going to be a good investment, too. And this is completely speculative, guys. This is based on nothing outside of a little bit of common sense. So take it for what it is. I have no insider knowledge, but maybe they have some insider knowledge that that's not going to be reprinted, or they really think it's not going to be reprinted, and that's why they're holding it. That's the type of stuff that I look for too when I see a lot of big box stores investing a lot. Now, I try not to invest in what other people are doing, but when other people are making big bets on things and I think that they might have insider knowledge, sometimes I would take a risk maybe on that. I prefer to know things for a fact myself, and you have to be, it's dangerous because people do stupid things all the time. And so when you assume that someone's being smart and you copy what they're doing and you don't understand what they're doing yourself, that's a very dangerous way to invest or do anything in life. Because and just because someone is a professional or seems like they know what they're doing, don't listen to them just based on that. You have to analyze the data, analyze what they're talking about, see if they really know what they're talking about. Do your due diligence. Okay. All right. Professor Oak says, I'm sending my complete PSA Grade 2000 World Pikachu collection off to PWCC tomorrow for next month's auction. Do you have any thoughts on why the prices are not very high on this set? I don't know the set too much. It was just super available all the time. Yeah, and just not like that desirable, all the different languages. I do think it's cool. Certainly is desirable from some people. Not a huge, I don't know, honestly, I don't have that much knowledge about it in terms of how much there is. I just remember seeing it around all the time. Could be an undervalued, underrated thing. There's a million cards in this hobby, a million different areas to look at. Maybe that's an area where you can make some money because I'm not looking there and I'm not trying to make that money there. I got enough home watching. Okay. So maybe we'll do 5 to 10 more minutes in the middle of the comments here, and then we'll jump to the end, which will be fun and kind of just like hang out. We can go back and forth on some of the stuff I may have said that you guys have comments on. All right, let's grab a few more questions here. As always, I know there are so many questions, we can't get all of them. Jeremy Judkins says, when do we get the opinion on gold and crypto video? I've got so many opinions, guys. Like, the thing is like, you know, I don't know. Do we turn this into a general investing where we have like some, you can let me know. Like, do you want like general investing sometimes on this channel? I don't know. I think we certainly should probably keep it to just like general, you know, my goal really, and I guess I can say this now, I'm looking into potentially starting a different channel with a couple of guys where we're going to talk we are going to talk a lot about Pokemon. We're going to talk a little bit more broadly about investing, about finance, mostly, pretty much exclusively probably around TCGs, CCGs, that sort of thing. In part so that I can keep this channel really focused on Pokemon and have another place for those who do want to hear other things, other investing, other alternative assets. Just general conversation should be entertaining, enjoyable, for you guys to be able to find that in a separate place, rather than trying to do too much on this channel. So we'll see. I'll let you guys know when and where and if that's happening. Ravage Rider says S&P or Pokemon. whatever you want to do. The old card says Pokemon is riskier, so the gains could be larger, but so could the losses. I think that's probably fairly accurate. There's a lot of reasons why you should put your money in the S&P 500 over Pokemon, though, including liquidity, including all sorts of fees. So you really have to know what you're doing, and I think have a certain amount of pretty high net worth probably, and buy some more expensive things or things you're going to go up a lot over time for it to really be worth it. Speaking purely financially, but as we say, life is more than just about money, and it's fun to invest in card bar. It's fun. It's a fun part of the Pokemon experience, and so if you can make a little bit of money here or have an awesome, cool collection that at least doesn't lose you money, that's money extremely well spent, I think. Curtis James says, "Hey Jake, I feel like collecting is never ending. However, I would like to set a goal for myself, which after I complete, I would basically pack it in. I'm going to collect every. Yeah, good luck with that. You're gonna just set another goal. We'll see, Curtis. We'll see. However, I would like to set another goal. I'm going to collect every first appearance of Gen 3. Very cool goal. Beautiful cards and challenging and difficult, particularly if you're looking for any sort of graded or high graded, but even not high graded, it's those are hard sets to find. Very cool goal. Trombone Guy says Jake should do a series where we, the fans, subscribers, send in a video of some of our collections, see what variety the community has. Yeah, I'm down for having more conversations with people from the community or doing different content in different ways. Whoever feels like it's like valuable for people, I'm up for. I'm definitely up for being creative and trying different things as time goes on. Aiden M says, Ben W. Yeah, sorry, you're responding to someone else. I try not to read those, just let you guys have these great conversations that are happening. Duelist Investment says, "Hey Jake, what Yu-Gi-Oh monster cards do you like?" So Jinzo is the card that I would want. Because that was my favorite episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! And the idea, like that whole idea of like winning someone else's best card was super appealing to me. I'm not sure what that says about me, how competitive I am, but the idea of like besting someone in a duel and then you get this like rare, insane card that you get to add to your deck and make you stronger. Like that just sounds like so much fun. So love Jinzo. Unfortunately, that card is a fortune, so I don't know if I'm gonna be getting it outside of Korean anytime soon. Although even Korean, it's a lot of money because that's one of the out of print Korean sets. So that's probably my favorite. Would be my favorite one. HEWA says, "Do you think uniqueness of a card is undervalued? I feel like cards like Modern, Half Art, Pikachu, Japanese promos, or World promos all kind of blend together as opposed to to the Monk, the Stained Glass, the Birds, etc. Definitely, I think that's true. It's just such a hard thing to quantify, but it's definitely true. That there's definitely uniqueness is clearly important and adds value and makes, particularly if it's unique as the people like and it makes something jump out. 100%. It's just such a hard thing to quantify. Sherry Starker says, "What's the percentage of collectors you would say with large positions? Say, greater than 50K, 10 to 50K, 1 to 10K, etc." I have no idea. I think there are lots of private collectors. I wouldn't even know how to guess that. It's a great question. I'd love to have that info myself. HWS says, "What percent of its value will the Master Scroll lose in the next 2 years? Over/under 90%. I don't think it's going to lose 90% of its value. So I'll take the under on that one. I mean, it's continued to do extremely well. Like it is what it is. Yeah, people are selling it a lot. It's coming up on the market a lot. Like I'm seeing constant sales of it. But it's still selling for very high amounts. I think maybe it's retraced. I'm not even sure where it's at right now. I think there's one currently going. I think Scott's selling. I think Scott is not selling his. I imagine he's selling someone who's consigning with him. I could be wrong about that. Right now on eBay. So yeah, I mean it's a great card and it's a super rare card. It's just not like on the level of some of those other trophy cards that are selling for that much by any measure that I can think of, by any fundamental measure that I can think of. It's still a great card. E says, "Hey Jake, any thoughts on the upcoming Japan post-stamp promo cards? Have you seen them? Hope you are well." I have not seen them. Let me take a look. Or maybe I have and I'm just forgetting. Hey, my computer's saying I'm dropping frames. Is that true for you guys, or can you still hear me? And just let me know if the sound and everything's good. But I'm seeing some dropped frames. So hopefully it's okay. Sorry. Oh gosh, I lost that question. What was I looking up? Japan Post? Let me look up pictures and give you guys my thoughts. Oh, the video's choppy again. But the sound is good. That's so annoying. I don't know why it's happening. Okay. So I have not seen these yet at all. I haven't heard about this yet. So when are these coming? $384 yen stamp space. Huh. I'll have to look into these more before I give you guys my opinion on them. Interesting. You guys will have to tell me what you think. Some people saying the video is good, some people saying it is lagging. I don't know. Fair enough. I think it wasn't laggy the whole time, right? Until very recently. That's what my computer's telling me with the drop frame rates, but okay. All right, so I am gonna let's jump to the bottom of the chat. And go from there. In our last 20 minutes or so. So if you guys do want to ask me some more questions or anything, you can start putting them at the bottom, and we can... anything I haven't touched on. Ooh, it's really laggy for me now, guys. I'm having trouble even reading the questions. Okay. I think I'm going to close it on eBay. Sorry, on eBay. On YouTube. I'm going to close my YouTube window, and I'll just read it from the Streamlabs. Maybe that'll help. Okay, let's see some questions here. Some people saying they want more finance, just general finance videos. Become a finance YouTuber. I don't think so. I mean, whatever. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I said on this show I wasn't going to do lots of things that I'm doing now. So that's the way the world works. Okay. Hey Jake, AdamM says, hey Jake, thoughts on Japanese modern full arts being secret rares compared to being ultra rares in the English set? Is the rarity difference alone enough to be a factor for future price difference? I don't know. I'm a little bit bearish on a lot of that stuff in general. So I'm not sure that I view any of that stuff as that investable, depending on the card. But rarity is very important. So, I mean, if there's a specific card, rarity is definitely always key. So, I think you could probably figure out my general approach to that would be it needs to be something that's going to stand out, and particularly if it's in Japanese and it's a set and it's a card that's also going to be in English, it really needs to be something that's going to set it apart, either being much rarer than its English counterpart or different art altogether, unique art altogether, that sort of thing. I'd be careful with Japanese modern, I think the sealed, I don't know, it's such a tricky conversation because it's clearly there's less supply, and I don't know. Who knows? Who knows, guys, on that stuff. I can see good arguments on both sides. It's just so hard to predict what people are going to want. in the long run. Adam Sislow says, "Hey Jake, do you wipe your cards off with a microfiber cloth before submitting to get graded?" I have not done that. I know a lot of people do. I have never had that issue where I had a card that had something I was trying to clean off of it or get off it that I also wanted to send in. But yeah, I haven't done that. I believe that people do it. I just haven't. Yeah. I've had good luck though, like with PSA over time. Like this past submission I showed on my channel was like one of my worst submissions ever. Like I tend to have good luck, so I don't touch cards with fingers. I tend to buy cards in large lots and things from people who they're pack fresh and they put it directly into sleeves. So I just tend not to have that much issue. I do think there are people who buy like cards that look kind of bad with the idea that they can like clean them up or fix them up a little bit. So I've heard that before, particularly in the sports card market. I'm not sure I've heard it too much in Pokemon, but I assume it's the same principle. I'm not sure how effective it is, or if anyone does that, you can let me know here, or just let's a little bit of blowing smoke. Super Shade 64 says, "Well, do you think the EX era sets are overvalued right now, or is justified due to rarity? It seems to be all over the place." I don't know exactly. Yeah, it seems to be all over the place. So many things are all over the place. So I think in the long run, you're going to have the rarity is looking better and better. I think people underestimate the rarity on some of those things because there's just so little coming back in these pop reports right now. They're looking great. On the other side, though, demand's going to be the issue. So if you want to go for it, I would go for those first appearance cards. And I don't think that people are valuing those correctly versus some of the others. KK says, "How was Pokemon 25th anniversary been for you so far? What about your expectations for the rest of the year?" It's been a fun year in Pokemon outside of like my just anxiety for people losing money, just to be completely blunt. Like I've had a blast collecting and enjoying other, non-Pokemon collectibles. Have had a blast talking Pokemon this much, meeting so many people in the community. It's been a great year for me, and super fun. So, yeah, but I have had plenty of sleepless nights, or fairly sleepless nights, like worrying about the hobby and worrying about people that I talk to, because lots of people contact me who are like very in debt, and they talk to me about just like the hardships and the personal things that are going on in their lives. I think in part because I'm a therapist, but that stuff is just hard to hear. So hopefully when things stabilize, think people will start maybe collecting and investing for better reasons, more solid reasons. Basic Trainer says, "Jake, as a community, how can we help those that are probably leaving the hobby retain their attention to it?" Yeah, so I think it's just like, I think unfortunately like anyone who was scammy this year or didn't give good balanced perspectives or push the market one way or the other, hype certain things, like all that stuff, it does have a negative, at least short-term effect, and does cause people to not want to be here and not enjoy themselves, not have a good time. I think like the Frosted Caribou video and her sentiment, I think people not having fun anymore, not being able to buy product, not feeling like it's all about the money, and it's not even, and people aren't even being smart about it. And it's about the quick money, it's not even about the long-term, slow, gradual, I think all that stuff turns a lot of people off, causes burnout. So I think just doing what you're doing, like you're a great guy. Saw your chat, that video you did, that interview you did, and you have a channel, just keep doing what you're doing, just being a great guy, being kind to people, showing and sharing your genuine enthusiasm for the hobby, not faking it to try and get views. Or there's going to be so many channels and people who just leave and die out when they can no longer get views, right? When things get a lot quieter and there isn't the type of boom, you're going to see people who like were mainly interested in building up their own channel or building just for views or these types of things, rather than building like a community of people that they like, that they're nerd out with, that they share so much in common with. So yeah, just be you. You so clearly are so enthusiastic and love what you're doing, and that's contagious. And people who like I think people know who the real people who love this stuff are. Like people I think can tell who's a collector, who's the same as you, who loves this stuff, and probably the people who give off a different sort of vibe. So, although to be fair, I kind of backtracking on that. It can be pretty hard to know people's intentions, and you have to be careful with your assumptions. So I kind of am going to backtrack on that a little bit. But I think that there's some value, and probably people can tell, particularly if you talk to the person a while and get to know them. Eric Merchandani says, Jake, how do you feel about Flesh and Blood? So I'm not a big Flesh and Blood person because it's just the type of art style and the type of game it is, and the fact that it's so focused on that gameplay, and it's for Redrung, it's like very Magic the Gathering feely to me. I'm not a big Magic the Gathering collector at all, right? I have very little. It's just not something that is nostalgic from my childhood, that connects to me as a collector. It's not that pop culture fun thing for me. So it's just not going to connect with me. That being said, I think it connects in a very real way for a lot of people, and they're doing what they're doing extremely well, and catering to their audience extremely well. It's just not catering to me and what I like, if that makes sense. So I've heard the game's extremely good, extremely fun to play, that when things open up, people will be able to play in the flesh and blood, and I think that's why they called it Flesh and Blood. People will be able to play in the flesh. I heard that rumor. That may or may not be true. But yeah. So I wish that game the best. I'm a big fan of like new games, people trying out new things. You just have to be super careful when you're speculating on brand new things like that. Same thing with like MetaZoo, which is even more speculative and even newer, even less of a fan base and less of a player group, right? Same thing. That being said, Rudy coming on board with those types of things will help them, and there's potential upside there. And if you're ignoring the potential upside, you're too pessimistic. That doesn't mean that you think it's worth the prices that it's at right now, and you don't think the prices are crazy. Like all those beliefs you can hold at once. And you can also wish for it to be successful. What's your opinion of the new EV set other than hard to get and boo modern? I'm not as big of a fan of it as most people are. Yeah. So I think it's fun. I haven't seen all the cards from it yet, so I will reserve some of my opinion until I've seen them all. I also like to see cards in person before I reserve my full opinions, because sometimes I look at cards online and they just don't hit me as much. I think I also get a little bit turned off by like when I feel like there are videos saying it's like the greatest set of all time, and I look at it and I'm like, come on, like really? You haven't even seen it. You haven't opened it. You don't know anything about it. It's just like that clickbaity hype stuff. It irritates me because I actually like this stuff, and I want to have a real reaction. And my real reaction is not going to be it's the greatest set of all time. That would be insane. There's so many sets and so many cards I have years of connection with. Many years. I'm not going to be as connected to a brand new card. It's just never going to happen. Now, if I look at it and it's like really freaking cool, then I'll say it, and that'll be great. I just think a lot of that's driven by people trying to sell something, trying to hype stuff up, and it unfortunately has the exact opposite effect on me, where it makes me dislike something a little more than I might actually like it, which is such a shame. That being said, I put that aside, and I think I can put my objective glasses on and say really how I subjectively feel about it. But everyone's gonna have their own subjective opinion. So I didn't particularly like the regular GXs. I'm interested in the alternate arts. We'll see how cool they are. I like the evolutions a lot. I'm not sure I like them as much as certain people do. They're among my favorite Pokemon, but I have so many favorites. So HTWA says, What kind of instrument music do you play, and who are your favorite bands? So I play guitar and piano, and I'm mainly a singer. I took voice lessons for a long time and did a cappella groups, bands, all sorts of things over the years. Tiny bit of musical theater. Um, Actually did some like opera stuff where I did some like competitions and different things in college, which was kind of fun. Um, yeah, so always loved music. I think my favorite stuff's always been a cappella groups and playing in bands. I also like to write music. Um, and what are your favorite bands? Gosh, the favorite music question, favorite band question is like it's a great question, but like it's I don't know, too many to say. Um, I have some that I think are like favorite for nostalgic reasons and just were connected to different eras of my life, and I like a lot of pop music, a lot of rock music, a lot of uh, alternative different types of music, indie. I love like folk music. I love jazz. Pretty eclectic. I like classical music. A lot of different things I like. Love guitar. I think guitar, you like great guitarists. Love listening to great guitarists, both classical and um, folk, acoustic, electric. Really enjoy it. Proud Pancake says, "Hey Jake, besides eBay sold listings and PSA pop reports, what are some great resources to use to evaluate different cards out there?" So there aren't too many right now, but there will hopefully be some more soon. Um, Riley Farr says, "What do you think about the early Nintendo EX cards? I think people are sleeping on the fact that they are the first cards by Nintendo." Um, yeah, they're great. We've talked quite a bit about them. They're rare. It's going to be demand side. It's going to be the issue. But I think the fact that they're the first Nintendo cards, I think, is a real thing that isn't talked about and isn't factored into the price and isn't felt yet. But will be felt more when there's tons more sets, newer sets. Rock Pokemon says, "I'd rather have you do a psychology channel." I have enough psychology as a full-time therapist, so I don't really want to do that on YouTube. We could talk about psychologies of markets, but I don't really want to do like human psychology and behavioral mental health stuff. I do that full time. This is my hobby and my fun. Team Trubich says, "Are we going to get a vid with reserved investments?" So I believe his name is Sean. We've never talked before, but I'm sure Sean would be down to come on the channel. Probably, I've seen him appear on a number of channels, including some of my friends' channels. So if you guys would like to see reserved investments on, we can definitely have him on. John Pokemon says, "Hey Jake, did you see the Charizard playing card at PWCC? Thoughts on it being the first Charizard card?" I think playing cards, although cool looking, it's getting a little iffy for me, but collect what you love, and if enough people really love those things and they're not just buying because they want to buy the next great thing, then it will have a market. Invest in that. That's important. So I think that they're cool looking, is what I will say. Adam says, "Yes, a Rudy collaboration would be awesome." Yeah, Rudy, I'd love to have Rudy on. If anyone wants to spam Rudy messages, don't bother him too much. But if we could get Rudy on the channel, I'd also like to have TBJ on, Twice Baked Jake, on the channel. I think talking about his channel and influencers in the hobby and all sorts of things would be a great, interesting conversation. But getting Rudy on the channel would be phenomenal to talk about that, because Rudy's been doing it a long time, has been making predictions and talking about publicly, and does he think it has an effect on the market? What's that like? How does he manage that? I'd love to have a candid discussion with Rudy. A big fan of his, just love his general demeanor. He just seems like, just very similar to a lot of us here, probably just like very into like finance and money and investing in the game of all that, and also loves like cardboard and art and, just the same thing that a lot of us feel. So that would be sweet. If anyone wants to get him on here, get him on here. So I haven't sent him an email, but I don't think Rudy's going to. Rudy never does interviews on anyone's channels, but maybe he would do one here, but I highly doubt it. Rudy, if you're watching this, come on the channel. Sniz Pepper says, do you know any cheap cards that are undervalued right now? Question mark. I'm not gonna. That's a little bit too much. Like, tell me what to buy. All right, so we got about 5 more minutes, guys, here. Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh! Said sleepless nights, question mark, or from what I was saying before. Yeah, nice to see you here, Solemn. Or Maxime, I should call you by your name. Yeah. I just, like, whatever it is, like, it's like, I'm very, passionate about, I think it's partially comes from my therapy practice, but I'm just, like, very passionate about, like, particularly younger people, setting themselves up well for their financial future. And I just know the financial stress and the crossover that has into, like, mental health problems. And, yeah. So it's I think I had a few of them around the Logan Paul period, particularly at the height when I was seeing all these channels, and I was just thinking about all of the mass hysteria, and when I was seeing like Mizkif and all these guys like talk about the prices of packs to all of their young impressionable streamers, and just getting everyone like dopamine all doped up on, the addiction and the spending, and then all these packs selling for so much, and people just raking in money from like their own communities. It killed me to see people like people who raked in many hundreds of thousands of dollars from their own community instead of warning them and talking to them about the risks. It just like I had some sleepless nights just feeling so upset about it and not knowing and feeling so powerless to do anything about it, and feeling like if I called these people out directly, it would just hurt me and my channel and what I'm trying to do, and make me, and people attacked me for being like jealous of these people or jealous of success or these types of things, or free market, man, people can do what they want. A lot of that stuff, it's absolutely a free market and people can do what they want, and I can also call a spade, which is people are taking advantage of others, and people constantly take advantage of others in free markets, and now people constantly take advantage of people in non-free markets, and non-free markets can be very dangerous and controlled by the government, and all sorts of problems can happen. We've seen in human history, and of course we live in a mixed economy where the government does control lots of things, some for the good, some for the bad. It's a whole nother. I'm also very into politics. We could have a whole political channel too. But one day we'll have like 5 channels, right? Just like Maxime. Maxime will have 5 channels here. We'll have, Jake talks about Pokemon, about politics, about. Jeremy's heading out. Thanks for coming. All right, so let's do 1 or 2 more questions. Super Shade 64 says, do you own any of your collection? I do. Own my collection. Rain Day Collectible says, Jake, you're just jealous that you don't have tickets to the moon. To the moon. Chris says, hey Jake, hope you're well, love the content. Sorry, I know this is a hard question and you're not a financial advisor, but do you think Base Set Unlimited will continue to retrace hard even if a high grade? It's tough. It's tough. I do think we're seeing, and I guess I'll end the stream with this, and this would be the type of thing we could talk more specifically in like a Patreon thing. It's really tough. It's really tough. I don't know how much is left out there. There's still lots of packs out there. There's still lots of packs that are going to be opened, and so there are going to be a lot more 10s and 9s and those types of things. So, it's really tricky. It's really tricky. But are the prices starting to get down to a point, particularly on like some 10s, where it becomes attractive again? Sure. These are iconic cards. I think people are going to get overly negative, overly burned out on it. I'm more worried with the 6s, 7s, and 8s because I just know the amount of childhood collections that are out there, and those cards, there's so many more to be graded if they ever get graded, in order for for all those to be absorbed and then the prices to go up. Now, do I think it's going to happen in the long run of the hobby? I think there's a chance. There's a good chance. I hope so. I think it'd be very good for this hobby for base set unlimited also to be valuable. It just goes to, all right, I'm not going to mention what I was about to say, but one stream without talking about a specific set. Okay. Super Shade says, I meant, do you own any collection boxes? Well, if I get them next time. No. I don't own any sealed ones. I open some up and have some cards. But, okay, so that's going to do it for today. Basic Trainer says, I prefer free markets, even if that does come with its negatives. I believe in full freedom and free will. So I doubt you believe in complete free markets, because maybe you do, and we could have that debate in terms of like where you like things to be a mixed economy or where you don't. I think most people in the United States, we have a mixed economy here, and the government does control certain things, I think, for the better. But Basic Trainer says, call me a pessimist, but I prefer realist. Scammers and people taking advantage of others always exist. Yeah, I mean, you and I, Basic Trainer, would probably agree on a lot. I think that I'm pretty like center right on some of those issues and on market and economy issues, and I'm center left on certain social issues. Although some of the rhetoric and the talk, I have so much of a problem with so much of what's happened like the past few years. In politics, it's been an absolute disaster. So, yeah. But I talk politics with my friends all the time. I love when people have different viewpoints than me. I'm very interested in people who are far left and progressive, and talking with them. Very interested in far right. I think for me, it's just about people being respectful and having an open mind and listening to other, and that probably all different perspectives across the aisle have value and bring certain value, and depending on the context, that's just how I view things. That's part of why I tend to be a devil's advocate type, we could say, because I tend to always see good arguments on multiple sides of things, and that's where I come from on politics. And I'm very interested in people's opinions and debates and experience, and I'm a lot more interested in learning than I am interested in being right. Like I'm so hungry to learn and be better and to have knowledge, and have very little interest in being right in this moment, right? I'd rather fight for what I believe is right, to then get it criticized or challenged by others, see how I was wrong, and improve. So, again, it's great seeing you guys all of you guys. Thank you so much for supporting. If you can, hit that like button on the way out, subscribe to the channel, and show support that way. And if you want to be involved in the Patreon, that is another option to support the channel. Another option will be we'll have a join button, I think, starting next month, which will be less expensive than any of the Patreon options, as another way to potentially support the channel if you don't feel like having any of those Patreon benefits. Again, everyone have a great week, and I will see all of you guys next week. Take care.